So let's talk a little bit about your child's brain. Scientists estimate that the human brain has been evolving for about 500 million years. The first human brains were not much more advanced than those of reptiles. They had a brain stem and a cerebellum, which controlled basic survival needs like breathing, swallowing, physical coordination, and other basic instincts. One of these instincts is called the fight or flight response to danger, which means when we're threatened, we're wired to either fight or run. Of course, when our ancestors liked what they came into contact with, they were programmed to either eat it or mate with it. Being instinctual, none of these decisions required any thinking, which was good because those early ancestors weren't capable of what we consider conscious thinking. And since we still have a brain stem and a cerebellum, or what we call the old brain, we still have those old instincts. And that's good when it comes to simply surviving. But it can cause serious problems when it comes to fighting and mating. So while the primitive old brain enabled our ancestors to survive, it didn't do so well when it came to thriving. Eventually, a second brain evolved on top of the old brain. We call this the emotional brain because it controls things like motivation and emotion. And it enabled humans to feel things like fear, joy, anger, caring, separation, distress, playfulness, and love. And so we can see the old brain, which is labeled number 1. This is our basic survival functions, instinctual behaviors, the fight or flight response. And then the emotional brain is labeled number 2. This is the emotions, memory, and bonding. And then the rational brain, which is labeled number 3. This is our executive center, and it's still under construction in children. It's typically not fully formed until we're about 25. We call this the prefrontal cortex, our rational decision-making part of the brain. Or as I like to call it, the mommy part of the brain, where it's like, maybe that's not such a good idea to do that. So this was a really great advantage for humans in a lot of ways, but emotions require management. And this led to the development of the third brain, which formed around the first two. And this is the rational brain, and we call it the cerebral cortex. It's humankind's greatest evolutionary achievement. At the front of this new brain is the prefrontal cortex, and like I said, it's considered the executive center of the brain because it's going to control the higher human functions like sound decision making, empathy, consideration of consequences, regulation of emotions, self-awareness, morality, things like that. The primitive old brain focused only on survival, but it wasn't left behind by evolution. It's how we're all born. A baby's brain, with its brainstem and cerebellum being the only parts that are anywhere near fully developed, isn't so different from the brains of our primitive ancestors. They're focused only on survival, but their brains develop fast, and around their first birthday, the emotional brain is starting to allow them more complex responses. Around age 7, the development of the rational part of the brain picks up speed. It then hits a huge growth spurt between the ages of 12 to 14, which is the onset of puberty, and it continues developing until age 25 to age 30. So you may have noticed that brain growth occurs from the back of the brain to the front. And this explains why children and teens still need the help of their parents and other adults for guidance. Although they are learning fast, they just don't have the brain development yet to operate independently, at least not as well as they will later. And when children experience stress, their brains are going to release a chemical called cortisol. And that's part of the fight or flight response that we have. Occasional stress is normal for a child, and the accompanying anger or tantrums or the shutting down is a normal part of development as well. But for kids who experience a lot of stress, like ongoing abuse or neglect, the constant presence of cortisol in the body can actually slow down normal brain development. And it can also hinder the child's ability to handle stress in the future. But fortunately, we have other chemicals called opioids, for example, like oxytocin, that provide children with feelings of comfort and well-being and enable them to thrive. Children's brains produce these chemicals when their parents hold them or hug them or show them care and affection. So in other words, when children feel felt by their parents. And parents who tend towards the dictator or the doormat styles of parenting put their children under too much stress and cause the release of cortisol and block the release of opioids. Active parents provide or allow their children to experience appropriate stress. They're able to calm and comfort their children when needed and provide physical affection. And all of these things causes the release of oxytocin and the other opioids in the body, which promote bonding and thriving. So the goal is to promote healthy growth and development of our children's brains, strengthening the positive neural connections and helping them survive and thrive at home and at school and beyond. So we're going to be focusing on 3 specific skill areas throughout this program: nurturing and support skills, like how you build a strong relationship with your children and teach them how to better relate to others; discipline skills, how you can help your children learn from the consequences of their actions; and also problem-solving skills, how you help your children learn to cope with conflict and make difficult decisions. So practicing these skills on a daily basis is not only going to improve the relationship with your children, it's also going to work invisibly in their developing brains. It's going to strengthen the connections in that prefrontal cortex in ways that are going to last a lifetime.